Hello, welcome again. This is James Oriel from Database for Beginners. Today we're going to look at the database model design and walkthrough, and our focus today is on user sign up and login. For every web application or mobile application that you're going to develop, you're going to need a database, and within that database, you're going to need access for separate types of users, and you want to also give separate types of users the privileges to be able to make some changes within your system. And having a proper database model to manage this information will play a critical role in ensuring that your database is designed in an optimized way. Also, in terms of scalability, this database model will handle it. So if you want to have something like two-factor authentication, you can always do this within this database. Now, what we have here is the requirement that we need for our database. Within the requirement, we have about five entities that we're going to store information about. We could call them tables, and these are the user. The user table will store things. We store information or data such as names, date of birth, and also with some foreign keys information. Similarly, we will have the user password. Now, this user password would also store some information such as the user password, their username, their email address, their password. If the system is designed for user to have a PIN code as well, we could have that as well, or verification code when that password was activated, and so on. Within our user type table, we're going to have this information such as the type of user the we have within our system. So are they an employee, or are they customers, or are they clients, are they managers? We just need to look at the type of the user. So these are default data that we don't need to do anything within our code. We can just have this information within our database as well. Also, we will want to look at things like the user privileges, and within the user privileges, we are going to be looking at something that what can the user do within the system. And if we have an employee, do we want an employee to be able to approve some annual leave, or do we want a customer to be able to pay or do some things within the system? Now we need to have this defined properly, so we can have things like can approve or can make changes or the way we want within our system. Also, it is important that when we're storing phone numbers, especially within our database, we should note that phone numbers is very important, the way we store it. We don't want to store our phone number in a way that we cannot identify whether a phone number is a work phone number or a home phone number, or even if two people might be allowed to share one particular phone number, because there might be one phone within an household, and you want to know whether if two people could share one phone number within your application. That means we want to be able to have a restriction within our code level. But this video is not about coding. This video is solely meant for data model. Now that we have a little glimpse of our requirements in order to design our data model for our user sign up and login, let's jump to um, Visual Visio or Microsoft Visio. And the first thing I normally like to do is to change this to landscape. And within Visual Studio, we have this. We have the shapes, the crow's feet database notation, and for this particular data model, I'm not going to focus on the attribute, because we can have entities without the attribute, and we can also have entities with attributes. So for this purpose, I'm not going to focus on the entities with attribute for now. At a later stage, we could add that so that we can understand how the data we're going to store is going to work. So what we have, basically, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have about 6 entities. So I'm just going to duplicate it, and as you move it, it's just going to expand it. So I'm going to have it, so that's 5 and 6. So the first thing we're going to do, what I've done is I've listed some information on the notepad, and I can share that in my link below as well. That information contains all the fields that we would need for our entity. So what I'm just gonna do, I'm going to call this user, okay, and then I'm going to say username, and that's the user ID, sorry, and we have reference number. So in our database, we're going to have a reference number which will be randomly generated number that will also uniquely identify our user, because it's not ideal to always use ID only for identifier. The ID is the primary key, but that is just for an for record, to count how many records we have. We should not really use this to identify our users. And we have things like so if we press Ctrl D, we can have that middle name, and I will just get another information. I'll just align this, and we have here last name, and we have here date of birth, I'm just going to duplicate a lot of this, and then we can change the information later. So here we have activated. This activated is going to show whether our user has activated their account if we send them an email activation, and we can also say activated by. So if an administrator have to activate their account as well, we can have that also. Now this is where we will have the user type ID. So for now, I'm just going to type that, and I will explain later once we are doing the relationships. And we will have our user password ID, and I will have user privilege type ID, and we will have user phone number ID, and I'll just duplicate this. I like to also use date created, because what we want to do is when we register a user, we want to know when that user was created. And another date that I also like to do is last updated. Now the last updated is specifically designed for when we make an update to this table, because we want to know when any information was updated. For example, the user can create an account on Monday, and maybe we allow the code to stay for some time, and the user can activate their account maybe about after 1 hour or 2 hours, and then this last date will show that this an activation has occurred within this particular last date updated. So another entity name that we can have again is the user password, which we have here. And it's always a good practice not to have a space within your entity name, because when you translate this information into the physical database design, then you want to make sure that you don't have space within your name. It is either you use or capitalize the first letter of each word, or you write everything in small letter but with an underscore space. Now we will have our user password ID, and we will have our username, and we will email address, have password, we have our pin code. Now this pin code is going to be stored so that when the user enters that pin code within our data, we confirm that they've entered the correct pin code as well. That's an added layer of security when we're activating our user account. Now we have the foreign key. Firstly, I'll just put the user ID, and I will put the user type ID, and then I will add the verification code. Now this verification code will be an encrypted code that will be sent and checked while the user verifies their account. Then we have activation, and again I always like to put the date created. We want to know when the user created that password and when they last updates the password as well. And the reason why I normally have the two dates is when we try and do the attribute for each of these fields, the date created is going to be just date, and the last updated is going to be timestamp. But we are not looking at the meaning of data types now in this video. So another aspect that we're going to look at again is we're going to look at the user type, and we'll have the user type ID, and we have the user type name. Now the user type name will be things like applicant, employee, customer, clients, business owners, and things like that. Now we will have also another table called user privileges, privilege type. The user privilege type will hold information on what the user can do and what the user cannot do. So we have the user privilege type name. Now I like to name my fields in a way that it makes sense. Sometimes I've seen a lot of people just say UID, and if somebody comes and look at your data model, can they really understand what that field name means? So sometimes it's always good to name it specifically what that field actually means, so that the user know what it does within the system. So we have that, and another entity that we're going to have will be the user phone number. And this user phone number, we're going to have just 3 fields. So we will have user phone number ID, and we have user phone number name, and we have user phone number type ID. This is a foreign key which links with the user phone number type that we will have as our last entity. So we have user phone number type, and this information we hold whether a phone number is home number or work number. And then we have type ID. I think I'll just copy this and just type this and say name, and then I will just remove this. Actually, yeah, I can just put the word type there. So we have our entities now, and what we can now do is, if we look at what we have here, it's already making sense, because what we are saying here in essence is this. We're saying we have our user table, we have our password, we have our user type, we have our user privilege type, and we have our user phone number. Now this 6 entities makes up our data model. Now how do we now link everything up, creating our foreign keys and primary keys within these entities? Now we can do that by dragging the relationship icon, and what we're going to do is we're going to first link with user and the password. So what we want to do is we link this with the user password, and it is possible that two particular user might have the same password, but they will not be the same name, and they won't have the same ID, and they won't have the same reference number. Okay, and let's get another table and link this with the user privilege type. So what we have here is the user privilege type ID, and we have this here. So what we are saying here is, I'll change this to ID. There might be lots of users within this table that has a privilege to maybe approve an applicant or an employee annual leave, for example. Now we would drag another relationship, and we can put that to the phone number, and within the phone number we can also link the phone number to the ID as well, so to the phone number type. So we want to know what type of phone number is this number. So if we have a landline here, we want to know, is this phone number stored here? Is it a landline or a work phone or a business phone? We want to know. And we have our user type ID as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drag another relationship, and we can have multiple user types. So we have this and to this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to move this away, and I'll move this. Sometimes when we are developing a smaller data model, we can adjust the relationship line not to cross, but sometimes when you have too much entities, then you might not be able to prevent that. So now, as we can see, we've linked this together. So what Microsoft Visio also gives us is we can highlight all this, for example, and I could set this to foreign key. I could just set each of them to foreign key. So we know within our data model that these are the foreign keys. And within the user type, we can set this to foreign key. So in fact, what I'm going to do, I'll bring this here and I'll move this. I'm going to move this here. What I could do is probably move this downwards and move that up here so that it doesn't cross, as I said earlier on. So now what we would do again is to have a link between our user type with our password as well. So now that we've done our data model, we can now just start to include our foreign keys. So here we can have the foreign keys. So what we've done basically here is we have a user, and this user, we have already linked it with the password table. So we know this user will know their password, and with the user ID, so we need to also link it here. So the primary key, and I'm just gonna go up there and put that here. So what we have here is, I'm going to move this so that we can see the design properly. So we have our user table, which is linked with the user password, and also we can see the connection. So here I'm going to set this as foreign key, and we've also seen here that within our user privilege table we have linked also the foreign key, and we've also linked the phone number. So with this, we can just begin to customize and just make it a little bit presentable within our system. We can just sometimes we just do this customization, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't really affect anything. But I just want to get the perfect data right. Okay, I think this is bright enough. Yeah. So as you can see, this is our data model for our user sign up and user login. So what we could do, we could just give this a title, and I can come here and insert I could insert a triangle, and within that triangle I could edit a text and say user sign up and login data model. Now we can now take this information to our database developer, and our database developer can design our database in either MySQL or SQL Server or Oracle. It doesn't really matter because we now have this information. Now I said when we have the time, we could quickly look at how we can add the attributes. So for example, we could just right click here and say show attribute, and if we show attribute, it shows the attributes. So here for example, we can just say it's virtual, but I don't want the line to cross. So for now, I'll just say varchar, although this is not how you spell it, but I don't want to mess with the design. So I'm going to have that information called varchar, or we don't even need that as well. So what I can just do is just to take it. But if we want to add that information, we just need to right click and show attribute, right click, show attribute, and we can change the data types. But we don't really need that, so I'm just going to remove that and hide the attribute. So this is our data model. I hope you've learned something. If you have any comments, any suggestion, ways that this database model could be improved, or if you have any version, drop it in the comment below. And if you have any requirement for a database model design, you can comment or send me an email in my contact as well, and I can respond to those questions. I hope you've learned something about data model today, and I'll see you again in the next tutorial, where we will look at probably how to design this database model within our SQL or within our MySQL database management system. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.